That eating experience drives a lot of our behaviours. So what I'm going to share with you today are some ideas and some thoughts, much like Melissa did, that hopefully you can think about and take back to your business when you're making decisions about what you do on farm, what you do in your business, and about the future. Before we go forward, I just want to go back just a couple of steps and just to kind of recap what we've been doing as beef and lamb and with the industry to really help position New Zealand grass-fed beef and lamb as a premium food choice globally. Country of origin branding is absolutely critical in what we call the pathway to purchase for consumers, right? And so, why is that important? Well, I'm sure many of you care about where your food comes from. I know I do, right? But if you don't have any understanding of that place or how they produce that food or raise the animals, then you're more likely to look past those brands and products from that place and choose brands and products from a place you do know more about, or you have more of a positive perception. So country of origin branding really helps us as consumers to make informed choices because it acts as a shortcut to understanding and trust. So here's an example. I buy frozen blueberries for my smoothie. I'm in the supermarket, I pull them out of the freezer. Now, I don't know about you, but I always turn the pack over and look for the country of origin. If it says product of Canada or Chile, I'll probably buy it. If it said product of China, I'd probably put it back. Now, I know nothing about the production or food safety systems of any of those three countries. I'm simply making a conscious decision about whether I buy these blueberries based on, in this case, my perception of what they might be from those countries. And the same goes for red meat. So what we've done as an industry is create a brand called Taste Pure Nature. It's a brand platform that we've been investing in with our exporters to really enhance the positioning of our grass-fed beef and lamb and differentiate what we do and how we do it from our competitors internationally. Here's what our story looks like. Put some volume.
Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. Taste pure nature.
Cool video, right? I love that. So what we know is that globally conscious foodies are seeking out grass-fed and pasture-raised beef and lamb versus alternatives like grain-fed or finished, even plant-based meat alternatives, primarily for its natural flavour, its nutritional properties, and its higher environmental standards. So it's our goal through this marketing program to essentially make New Zealand grass-fed beef and lamb the preferred choice in our key export markets. And we've had a concentrated focus on the US and China. And so together with our exporters, the likes of Alliance and Silver Fern Farms and ANZCO and so on, we jointly invest in a range of retail marketing initiatives to educate consumers, get them aware of what makes New Zealand products different, and ultimately drive sell-through at retail. In order to do that effectively, we need to know what consumers value the most when it comes to their food. So we're continually monitoring consumer trends and what we call value drivers, right? What's important to people when they're making these decisions, many of which have been amplified through COVID and more recently are changing again because of the economic impacts that are happening in most countries around inflation and food affordability. But fundamentally, it comes down to three main drivers, right, that are important to consumers when they make these food choices. The first of these is taste, right? When we decide whether we like a product and if we're going to buy it again, it comes down to the eating experience. Plain and simple. No one's going to buy food or buy food again if their eating experience was bad. They didn't like it, tasted crap, right? It's the number one driving factor that's most important. And I'm not just saying this, there's plenty of research around that says it. So a survey by the International Food Information Council showed that 88% of those surveyed stated that taste was their primary reason for buying a product. The real moment of truth is not when they're in the supermarket choosing that product or buying it. It's when they get home and they start to eat it, right? That's going to determine whether they have a good experience and whether they choose to buy that product again. Melissa mentioned flexitarianism. It's definitely gained popularity, particularly as conscious consumers aspire to eat less meat. The positive, though, is when they do choose to eat meat, or red meat in this case, they want a premium product that they know is going to taste amazing, and they'll pay a little more for it. Of course, it's not the only factor that determines taste, but for consumers, when it does come to the taste of beef, for example, the thing they know to look out for is marbling, right? These are some shots that I recently took up in the States in a supermarket meat case. Marbling is on display. It's front and centre. And it's promoted as such at point of sale where consumers are going to buy, right? And you might think, well, that's all well and good for a grain-fed or finished product, right? They can achieve that kind of marbling effect. But even this has fantastic marbling for a grass-fed fillet. So we can achieve that. Trouble is, given our grass-fed farming systems, it can be a little more challenging to achieve parity with our international competitors. Right? The marbling typically on our competitors' products is often far more prominent. So the key point I want to get across here, and Melissa was talking about it as well with IMF, is that we need to be thinking about breeding for traits that deliver higher marbling and ultimately a superior eating experience, because that's what's driving consumer satisfaction and desire to buy. And it's important. When we survey or ask consumers, tell us about a country or place of origin that, sources or you can get premium beef from, New Zealand's not number one. You can see the number one countries coming up: Japan, Canada, USA, Australia. Now, arguably, they're the ones that are grain feeding and grain finished, right? New Zealand's well behind that, or has been. Through our Taste Pure Nature marketing program, we've started to have some real impact on consumer choice and perception about premium and quality, but we've got a ways to go. That's the first. The second key attribute or value driver that's important is about health and wellness, right? And in the wake of COVID-19, consumers are choosing food products that can provide an additional health benefit or in some way boost their immunity. They're also more interested in food that's fresher and better quality. They're conscious about the products that they're going to consume and put in their body that are going to support their overall well-being. This is just an example of a supermarket aisle in the States, right? And there's aisles and aisles of the stuff. These happen to be sort of concoctions and single immunity shots and all this kind of stuff. My point's around consumers are seeking out food products and beverages that are going to support their health and well-being needs. So the importance of sustainable food for healthy eating is growing. Again, a couple of shots from US supermarkets, beverages in this case, just aisles and aisles of beverages. Now the trouble is, within these categories, it's very hard to get cut through as a brand, and for consumers it's really hard to navigate and make informed choices because there's so much on offer. It's not all about fruit and veggies and supplements though, right? Here's some data from McKinsey which says that half of Chinese consumers eat meat regularly. And surprisingly, this is pretty consistent with the US and the UK around meat consumption. For these consumers, meat remains central to their diet. And it's not just Chinese consumers. Consumers everywhere who still eat meat protein value it. They see it as something healthy for their body, generally. However, on the flip side, when it comes to reasons to limit meat consumption, Chinese conscious foodies, for example, are doing it for health reasons. Why is that important? Well, in this case, health is the most important factor that drives Chinese consumers in their meat choices. And you can see here, while price is always a factor generally for many consumers around the world, so we can kind of put that aside, in other countries, that point around quality and taste and their eating experience are also highly important. Food is medicine, right? Well, this is not a concept that's new. It is taking new and interesting forms. And what we're seeing is this rise of adaptogenic products. They're everywhere, particularly in the States. I've just come back from Expo West. Adaptogenic products and labels everywhere on their food products, right? And so what these are plants and typically mushrooms that help your body respond in some way to either like stress or anxiety or fatigue, and they support overall well-being, right? So Space Tea, cool brand, I liked it, took a photo of it. It calls itself the world's first adaptogenic mushroomed iced tea and lemonade beverage. Bit of a mouthful, right? But health and well-being in the creation of our food products is something we all need to be thinking about, right? So should we be thinking about grass-fed beef and lamb from New Zealand as a medicinal food that supports health and well-being? And it may be hard to pull that through in terms of the product per se, but in the way we go about thinking of our business and what we do on farm and how we take that message through, I think that's important to consider. The third key value driver for consumers is around climate, right? So I used to talk about a climatarian, but that's so 2022, right? The new term is regenivore. So it's no longer about eating just sustainably, because that essentially implies a state of preserving what is, right? A new generation of consumers want food products from companies that are actively helping the planet through carbon-reducing agriculture. PepsiCo, for example, sees its regenerative agriculture approach as the key to transforming its supply chain and meeting its net zero emissions targets by 2040. So what can you do as farmers to ensure you're doing all you can to farm in a way that is better for the planet? And Nick's going to talk to you shortly about NZFAI and the NZFAP Plus programs, which are a mechanism to help get there. So the opportunity becomes, if we get this right, to position New Zealand grass-fed beef and lamb and our industry as the best in the world. Many people and consumers pay attention to sustainability claims when buying meat. Interestingly here, when you ask them about sustainability, in the way we would probably typically think about it, environmental factors, you get these other factors, grass-fed, pasture-raised, those sorts of things, right? So it's this big bucket. Consumers are confused around what sustainability is. They want to know, essentially, what's a good choice and what's not a good choice. Despite all these different meanings, though, and these factors, the environmental aspect, while less important on this chart, it's absolutely growing. And we can't lose sight of that. How's this translating to products in store? Here's some examples, right? These are certified regenerative products or climate products that are already available on shelf. Retailers internationally are conscious of this growing trend and selecting brands that have these kinds of certifications and putting them in front of consumers because there's this growing interest in it. Here's an example more closer to home, right? So Thousand Hills, they've recently launched a regeneratively raised suite of barbecue products, pulled pork, pulled beef. What they've found is that today's consumers, in their own words, desire flavour, convenience, while making a positive impact on our food system and environment. So it's already showing up. What's been touted as better for the environment versus agricultural production is often plant-based foods, right? Plant-based food is hot right now. Plant-based alternative meat is not so much, right? At least not now. After years of double-digit growth, it's starting to plateau. So why is that? Well, when it comes to plant-based foods, most consumers are choosing it for their own health, more so than the health of the planet. So these first two value drivers I've talked about are all about me as a consumer. I've got to satisfy me and what's important to me before I worry about the social issues like the planet. They're still important, but I want to care about me first. So it's all about their health. So as a result, what we're seeing is this shift in retail supermarkets for plant-based meat alternatives. They're actually shrinking. People are becoming more aware that they're highly processed, and actually that's not that good for my health. And the environmental impacts that have been touted to me, actually, maybe they're not so true. So sentiment is more negative and it's growing. And what's happening with these products, the meat alternatives, is that they're shrinking and they're moving to the frozen aisle, the frozen section. Extends shelf life, or they're showing up as an ingredient in some other finished product, whether it's a ready-made meal or something like that. So they're less about a patty on its own, right? And it's used as an ingredient. But never assume that plant-based products have reached their limits of innovation, right? So freezer staples like patties and nuggets, and look, there's a massive range of these types of products now. The formats have just gone off the charts. There's lots of other innovation happening, right? And Chicken, for example, here has introduced a new range of products with global flavours, tikka, whatever it might be. So they're always innovating this industry, right? And delivering to taste and flavour and experience and bringing in global aspects to that to enhance their offering. Another interesting movement that we're seeing is upcycling of food. What is it? Well, it's basically taking food waste and turning it into something new. So Keiju Love, for example, produces a meat substitute product from upcycled cashew fruit. Now, the waste cashew fruit would have otherwise gone to landfill, but they're using it to produce a meat substitute. So again, the point or question for you guys is, have you thought about upcycling within your own business? How could you upcycle the waste that you have? And you might think, whatever. But Raglan Foods, right? Does anyone eat the Raglan Foods coconut yogurt? You seen it in the supermarket? Yep, it's great stuff. I've just seen that they've released a metal brazier. It's available to buy at Bunnings. So, these are metal braziers, you put wood or charcoal or whatever and cook some food on it. And they're made out of steel drums that had coconut cream that they sourced, right? So they're thinking about it. You can too. So just to recap this consumer piece, right? So the holy grail is to get the combination of taste, health, and the planet right. Marbling is definitely a leading indicator of taste, and so it's important that we are breeding for this kind of trait. We need to ensure our beef is of great quality and as highly nutritious as we possibly can make it. We need to be thinking about it as medicinal food. And we need to be farming in a way that's better for the planet. Jumping back to Taste Pure Nature. We've leaned into these value drivers, right? These are our guiding light. And we're using them. If we get this on farm piece right, we get the supply chain right, this is the kind of thing we could do. Right? We created ready-made meals with delicious grass-fed beef and lamb that were highly nutritious, premium ingredients. This is in China. We put them into vending machines, you can see there on the left. We put them around Shanghai, high traffic areas. We've taken this concept of from New Zealand, naturally good, and weaved it into our marketing efforts through social media, through brand marketing, online, through our partnerships with exporters. In LA, we created a food truck, right? We designed this grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb menu. We took this food truck around LA, gave away 15,000 samples to these kinds of people, right? Super powerful, creates buzz, it gets food, delicious food in people's mouths. We can tell the story about health and nutrition and the way we farm when we're front and centre with these people. And we've carried this message around taste, right? Discover the taste, something unique and different. Through billboards, through social media advertising, through digital advertising, and even working with influencers who advocate and tell our story on our behalf to their communities. And it has an impact. We measure a whole bunch of different things, right? We boil it down to two key KPIs. One is awareness, right? Are conscious foodie consumers more aware of what makes New Zealand unique and different in the way we farm and in terms of what we produce? Oh yeah. Look in the middle there, across both markets. And then has that actually created an impact? Are they now more inspired to go out and buy New Zealand grass-fed beef and lamb if they can? Hell yeah, right? Numbers are all going the right direction. We've significantly increased these numbers from the benchmark before we even started this, right? We went in and benchmarked it so we had something to look against. Really good numbers. That's campaign activity and getting consumer action. We also have measured the cost-benefit assessment, right? If we invest $1 into Taste Pure Nature and these branding efforts, and we take what's so compelling about what we do, what does it do? Well, it actually generates $8 return to New Zealand's economy. That's an 8 times multiplier. It just shows that if we get this right from farm, right through to fronting a consumer, we can add value. And to Melissa's point about profit, it's not about driving more volume necessarily. It's about creating an opportunity to get more revenue, but capturing it, being able to capture it, that's the hard part. But we've proven we can do it. So I'm going to hand over to Nick now, who's going to take you through NZFAI and the linkage with Taste Pure Nature. So over to you, Nick.
Cool, good morning everyone, and thanks Mike, that's always a really good presentation. So my name's Nick Beeby, I'm the General Manager of the Market Development Program in Beef and Lamb. I also am the Independent Chair of New Zealand Farm Assurance Incorporated, which I'm just going to run through right now, and am involved in a family farm in Crown Thorpe, Hawke's Bay. So if you think of NZFAI, New Zealand Farm Assurance Incorporated, the whole purpose of this organisation is around facilitating market access, to making sure that our products can get into the right customers around the world, and it's also about that social licence to operate. And we do that through independently verified standards. And the other part is that this is delivered by the collective red meat and wool sectors now. So there's always been a story around how competitive the meat and the wool sectors are. You know, this is an example of everyone actually pulling together to ensure that our products can get into those customers right now, but also that we are very future focused, so we understand what's coming towards us, so we can ensure that we try and get one step ahead of our competitors and can maintain that access into the future. So what you can see here, when NZFAI was started through the Red Meat Profit Partnership, there was 5 meat companies and Beef and Lamb New Zealand at the table. I think it's about 5-6 years on, there's 16 meat companies and 20 odd wool companies, Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Dins and the likes of Pamu, etc. as well. We're all investing to make sure that we can take a collective story through to the market. And as you heard from Mike, that collective story is Taste Pure Nature. So to be part of the Taste Pure Nature program, the product has to, or the animals have to have originated from NZFAP certified farm. So just to give you a quick snapshot of NZFAI, and then shortly I'll go into a little bit of detail around the programs. We are set up as any professional organisation would be. We have a board which consists of meat and wool companies and Beef and Lamb New Zealand and Deer Industry New Zealand. We have advisory groups which provide advice on the standards that we have. So the standards are updated annually, and the technical advisory group, which includes farmers, meat company representatives, representatives from MPI and a few other interested parties, they provide advice on how those standards should continue to evolve. So there is an advisory group on the NZFAP program, advisory group on the NZFAP Plus program, and an advisory group on the wool programs as well. So this whole organisation and I suppose the development of those standards has to run through a fairly strict regime. In terms of priorities that we have as an organisation for the next 3 to 5 years, we are putting a lot of investment into making sure that our standards are future focused and that they are, and that's why you've seen the introduction of the NZFAP Plus program. So there will always be investment in making sure that we're looking into the future and that our standards are leading in that space. We are spending a lot of time on tools to make it easier for farmers to enter the program, and once they enter the program, to ensure that they can stay engaged in that. So later this year, you will see NZFAP online be delivered. And this will be an online portal where farmers can record all the necessary evidence that they need to for when they are audited. And a key part about this is making the job of the auditor's life a little bit easier, so they can actually review those pieces of evidence before they come on farm, so they can spend less time on farm as well. So there's a real efficiency gain there. And when we talk about efficiency, one of the things that we know that we have been able to complete as an organisation is there's 37% less auditing going on within New Zealand because of NZFAI. So in the past, if you were a farmer and you were supplying your cattle to Silver Fern Farms, your lambs to Alliance, and your mutton to AFCO, as an example, you would be getting audited 3 times, probably by the same guy driving up your driveway at different times of the year. And we've been able to cut that all out by working together. That reduction in audits has also led to about a 37% reduction in total costs of the program, which is pretty massive for the industry. The fourth part that we are really focused on is around leadership. And as certifications become increasingly important to get access into markets and into customers. Making sure that our farmers have the opportunity to get involved, understand why this is important, that leadership from the sector and being able to take a whole of sector voice into these discussions is incredibly important. We also want to make sure that where possible we can reduce the duplication that farmers are seeing between some of the standards that we have and then having to do something different for a council. So that leadership will drive hopefully a better experience for farmers as well. When we talk about programs, we have the two primary programs, NZFAP, which is our foundation, and NZFAP Plus, which is our sustainability program. I'm just going to go, just after this video,
We were interested because for the last 15 years we've seen the direction of travel in the world, and we realised that we need to start making changes, because if we don't do that, we'll have our Kodak moment and suddenly we'll be irrelevant because people won't want to buy our product because it's not acceptable how we're farming. My name's Jason Miller. In conjunction with my brother and my son, I run 630 hectare farm called Rodston Downs, predominantly sheep and beef, and we're based just under the Hokanui, about half an hour north of Invercargill. The standard farm assurance program focuses in on aspects around animal welfare, making sure you have good documentation of your animal treatments, stock movements, all those sort of things. It's farm orientated as opposed to the Plus scheme, which is all those things plus the environmental and social aspects.
My name's Lachie McKenzie. I'm from the Hacker Valley in South Canterbury. We farm fine wool merino sheep and Angus cattle. The farm has been in the McKenzie family for 130 years. There were not a lot of changes needed to be made. It was more about documenting what was already in process on farm and having it as a standard there through NZFAP that we could refer back to in future. This program's really important for strong wool farmers. The incentive is that getting farmers involved in NZFAP, getting them to put their assurance number on their speci form.
We were asked to become part of the pilot scheme for Farm Assurance Plus, and what that scheme does is it covers off the basis of the farm assurance program that exists, but it adds in another dimension around much stronger focus on environmental and social governance of how you run your property.
Keeping a farm organised physically and then on paper are two very different things. Programs helped a lot in that respect of the templates, the availability of documentation online. It does save time. It's one of those things that once you've got it there and it's in place and the process is set, it's a very easy system to keep to the standard.
We're like many other farmers. We've done some good things, we've still got more to do, but we now have a process that we can show people and say, this is where we are and this is what we're working to. We have a roadmap basically now. We started doing regular water measurements both at the start of the farm and exiting the farm to determine if we were having a positive or negative effect on water quality. We started doing visual soil assessments on an annual basis. When we're wintering cattle, we'll take photos of that and that'll get downloaded onto our database so that when we come to do our audit, it's all in one place. We've got not only the numbers, but we've got photographic evidence. With NZFAP Plus, one of the systems we went through was a full audit of our soils. So we've actually gone through and changed some of the things we're doing on farm, and that's allowed us to actually get a productive improvement. We do much more intensive fertiliser testing, so we may be putting less on but in the right places and less on areas that don't need it. I would definitely recommend the program to other farmers, at the very least just to find out where you're at, and I think most will find that they're actually in a lot better space than what they probably think they're at.
Get off the fence, give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? It's not costing you money to do this audit. If you're worried about it, don't be scared. You'll see benefits in it. Don't be shy. Give it a go.
There is zero risk to be part of the program. For me, it was a fantastic learning experience about where we are as a business, but I think most farmers will find that it's achievable.
So that just is a video which I suppose highlights some of the key parts about the NZFAP and Plus programs. NZFAP, as I said before, is our foundational program. It covers really what is expected right now within most of our markets around the world. It covers things like animal health and welfare, some of those traceability things, food safety. Those are the real fundamental things that will get us access into markets that we're in right now. NZFAP Plus is a voluntary sustainability program which farmers can enter into voluntary and will go deeper into certain areas, so it goes much deeper into the area around sustainability, covering things like climate change, soil, water and biodiversity. And it also goes into completely new areas, areas around biosecurity and how you manage the staff on your property. I suppose some of those ethical areas. As a farmer with a large interest in a farm, we're just now taking our property through the NZFAP Plus program. Just to make sure, I'm quite keen on it, obviously as being chair, but I wanted to see firsthand what it was like to go through that process. And what I have found, and we're at the relatively early stages, is even though I grew up on the property and I don't know how many times I've driven over it, I was still learning new things that are going to be beneficial for the productive capability of that farm, as well as the sustainability side of it as well. We have learnt, this program has been in the market now for just over a year, and we have 300 odd farmers that are members of NZFAP Plus, and we did a review on the program with those first farmers about 6 months ago. And what we learnt from them, we have put into action very quickly. So we've actually created a tier within NZFAP Plus to encourage that farmer uptake. And that tier basically enables you as a farmer to create the plan for the future. So if you have a plan around how your farm will evolve in some of those areas that are important, that will get you into the journey. It allows you to take that first step. The next tier is really around implementing that plan and making sure that you can evidence the benefits that implementing that plan is having on those areas. So there are two parts to it. One is around entry, getting yourself into the program, and then the second part is around delivering on the benefits of it. It is all around making sure that this is a program for all farmers, whether you're starting at a level down here or a level up here, because at its core, it's about continuous improvement. I've talked about a lot of that. So one of the points that Melissa and Mike have both talked about is the attributes or the claims that are on the product. And I think Melissa used the term, you've got to stack them up, because the consumers are looking for all of those claims, whether it be grass-fed, whether it be ABO, GMO, there are a number of them, climate positive, carbon neutral. These programs, the certification schemes, are a way for farmers to prove those claims. So as you consider your farm and what you need to be in the future and some of those claims that you want to provide for, NZFAP and NZFAP Plus are certainly part of an important, they allow you to stack up your attributes. And they allow Mike and his team, as well as all the individual meat companies, to tell a story in the market that's not only emotional, but it has substance. And that's what makes New Zealand so different from any of our competitors internationally, bar Origin Green. Every other story is just emotion with no substance. Origin Green is emotion with a little bit of substance, but a fair amount of Irish twist. Taste Pure Nature is pure emotion and pure substance. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick and Mike. I just wonder if we take a moment to take some questions. Has anyone got any questions for Mike or Nick? Just over here, Sonia.
Yep. Is it on? Brian Bendel. Hey, look, great. Enjoyed the day so far. Fantastic. And I think last time I heard you, Nick, was about 10 years ago to Sheep and Beef Farmer Council. I'm glad you've moved Taste up the ladder. So that's sort of where I wanted to pinpoint was, and it's just as you talked about the NZFA, you've got all the meat companies on board. That's great, and what you're doing there is fantastic. But as Mike said, it's about taste. So we can quantify all the attributes on farm about, how we're looking after our stock and our environment, etc., etc. The one thing that Beef and Lamb hasn't done is help us guys quantify the taste of our meat. We have no grading system. And you're wanting, to put the best taste out there, which comes first. You've sort of told us that. Well done for catching up. But, so you see where I'm coming at?
Yep, I do.
It's really hard for us guys down on the farm, and the other thing, just to add on to that a bit, is that you've promoted the taste, and as I just said, you can't quantify it. But the other thing is you haven't looked at the demographics of our sheep and beef herds as to whether we can supply it. So it's sort of I'm a bit lost on that one, and I think we need to get a point of clarification, A, around the claims for our taste, which is obviously a grading system, and B, have a targeted look at the demographics of how we're going to get there. And to what I mean is the Brahman Association have just had a conference in Rockhampton, and they basically pulled their pants down and had a look at the Brahman industry, and they've identified 5 areas that they need to improve, and one of them's marbling at the bottom, well, in conjunction. But basically, this lead scientist, meat scientist, the guy Hall, I think, said, if we don't get marbling into Brahman, we're producing manufacturing beef.
Yeah, look, that's a good question, and I suppose one of the things that we identified really early on is around roles. What's the role of an industry organisation versus what's the role of the commercial companies as well. And in the old days, I wasn't even around at this stage. The old meat board would have a grading system, and then the companies took that over. So the grading of product, that is the responsibility of the individual meat processors, and I know some of them have programs in place, and there are also a range of other companies that I know are looking at what are opportunities for the future in that space. But that is, going to sound like a politician, but that role is with the meat companies around grading. Yep. MLA have a budget of about 170 million Australian a year as well, which is quite different from us. So that's, and it's not to say nothing. It's not to say nothing is happening, because companies do have grading systems, and other companies are looking at investing in grading systems in the future.
And just on that, so tomorrow on the field trip, we will have Nicola Schurz, who will be doing a talk on basically premiums and grading. So that will be happening tomorrow.
This is probably a question more for Michael. So talking with Warren McNabb from the Ritter Institute a few weeks ago, actually as we were looking for speakers for tomorrow, and he was making the point to me that in his view, and he's coming from I guess a human nutritionist point of view, so not necessarily a marketer, that the big advantage that we've got to talk about in beef is sort of the the micronutrients, the availability of micronutrients and ways to get your nutritional satisfaction. Just interested in where that sits, if at all, on the radar of consumers. It's all very well for us to say that as scientists or producers or whoever we are, but are consumers thinking about that sort of thing, or is that just a level of science speak that goes over all of our heads?
I think they are. It's just at what level? Because as humans, we don't like making decisions. We want it to be really easy, and so we look for labels and all kinds of stuff that tell us this is the right thing to do. There'll always be people that want to go deeper into understanding, micronutrients and the impact they'll have on their body. But for everyday consumers, they're just looking for, key terms or labels, whether it's zinc or iron or things like this, right? They just want to know, is what I'm going to eat good for me and my body, right? And we see it turn up on packaging labels and stuff like that. So yes, but it's at a kind of high level, right? No one really wants to get into the detail. And so, particularly with Taste Pure Nature and the way, the exporters roll out their brand stories as well, the suite of nutritional benefits is kind of packaged up into something small, simple, and fairly compelling. The other thing is around science and data to be able to support those sorts of claims. So, if there's new research, new data that supports the impact on someone's personal health or well-being or performance or whatever, then sure, we could take that forward. But again, we'll be putting that filter on it with what's really going to be important and matter to that consumer when they make those choices.
I've kind of got two questions, one for each of you. Can I start with the practical one, Nick? So I noticed on your Red Meat partners and partners in general, there was no on-farm recording included in that. I would have thought they'd almost be a stakeholder. I use Resolution, I know people use Farm IQ or whatever, and that's my day-to-day. That's going to produce you a report, and should that not be standardised for best uptake? And quickly, in the same thing, do farm environment plans, FEPs of beef and lamb, they're obviously just standardised to fit into this and then we can suck all the guts out of it, or how does that fit?
Yeah, good questions and get them a lot. So yes, the beef and lamb farm plan is basically an exact replica of the environment module within NZFAP+. That was designed purposefully to ensure that the extension efforts of beef and lamb and the workshops that farmers can go to, if they go along to those workshops, learn the techniques and develop up their own farm plan, that will fit perfectly snugly in that NZFAP+ component. So if you've done it, Max, job's done. In terms of the on-farm recording and using other systems, absolutely. This is not around, one of the other things we've heard from farmers if they're recording information here or there, that surely that should be able to be, sucked up into the NZFAP online or shared. And look, I'm not sure of the exact sort of technical terms. Melissa will know far more about that than I will, but absolutely that's the intent, is to be working with all those people like Farm IQ, and we do, to ensure that there is that capability and alignment. It won't all happen on day one, because the idea is, if you've got your drenching records that come from Vet Services Hawke's Bay in terms of batch numbers and use by dates, the idea would be that that information could be sucked up directly as well. But with a lot of these things, they just will take a little bit of time to develop. So it's we've got a priority set in terms of which partners we will work with first, and then we'll just keep on going down that pathway to work with everyone that wants to work with us.
Cool, thank you. That's a great answer. And then just one more, sorry, Tim. Michael, is the Taste Pure Nature country of origin label, is that currently actually on products in market? Can we see that? Because it's such a cool thing. And
Yeah, you've asked that question of me before, I think.
Several times.
It is in some cases. So Silverfern Farms, for example, have chosen to put it on to some of their beef products that are in China. But that's not really the angle we've taken. We sort of started with that idea and being able to transition that story that people see in their everyday lives through advertising right through to in-store in the supermarket. What we've come to understand with the help of the exporters and the brand owners is that our role as sort of beef and lamb and with them through Taste Pure Nature is to get people aware of what makes us different, gets them to want to try and buy it, send them to that store environment, but very much hand off that interest and direct that interest towards the brands that they can buy, right? And so that's where we've tended to find a happy middle ground with these guys, is that we'll bring people there, introduce them to the brands, and have them select from the options available, rather than trying to take Taste Pure Nature, which is about a New Zealand story. It's not necessarily a product attribute story. We'll kind of, but if you think of like that, integrate really well, hand off in that in-store environment. But some have chosen, as I mentioned, to take that brand all the way through. Correct. So talk to your meat company and ask why not. It's not, at the end of the day, people are still going to buy that product, right? They're going to look for the label of New Zealand at a minimum, and ideally look for those brands that we've, partnered with and showcased through these marketing efforts. And it gives them an opportunity to tell their unique story at that point of purchase rather than take over. And that's the whole idea here with Taste Pure Nature. It's not designed to take over the job or the marketing job of the companies who have their own brands and aspirations for those brands. It's designed to work in harmony. So that's the happy approach that we've kind of landed on so far.
Tim Britton, just a comment before a question on Brian's question. It was quite ironic that Lockwood was here before, but I think he's left. But he was the minister responsible in 1997 for getting rid of the grading system, which New Zealand at that stage was well ahead of USA and Australia, but it was tossed out. But anyway, that's past history. Question, if farm assurance is a requirement for Taste Pure Nature, what percentage of farmers are now certified as farm assured? And if they're not at 100%, how are the companies differentiating the product going into the market under that banner?
So on NZFAP, I think there's, as of last week or so, there was about 7,640 odd farmers that were certified. All companies run differentiation lines, so they can certify product that's farm assured versus non-farm assured. They have to do that for their market access requirements everywhere. Those processes are all signed off by MPI and customers in the market. So we're piggybacking on those systems. Within the license agreements that we have with our partners, they will they're making those declarations that it's only farm assured product. There have been some cases where some of our partners have said, look, there is a problem here. We can only guarantee, I don't know, might have been 90% of that product is farm assured. We think the rest of it is, but we can't guarantee it. Can we still work with you? And we've said no, it has to be that 100%. And then they've gone away, made some changes, and then come back and said, now we can guarantee it. So the systems are in place, and we are just piggybacking on those systems.
Excellent.
I would have liked to have heard Lockwood's answer as well.
Cool, thank you very much. If we can all show our appreciation to Nick and Mike, that was a really good talk. So that wraps up the morning session. We'll now break for lunch. Again, lunch will be served here and we can eat in this space. And we will be starting again at 1:30 and everyone will be back in this room at 1:30. So I'll see you all then.